The action-packed, visually stunning movie, starring veteran actor Mel Gibson, has finally been released. He plays an experienced hunter, hidden deep in the mountains. He and his daughter live by hunting, enjoying the tranquility of the forest. However, their peaceful life was shattered that day. A severely injured, unfamiliar woman fled to their location. This also brought mortal danger to the father and daughter. However, the forest is a hunter's paradise, and also a place that can easily become a nightmare if you slip up. The story begins 3 days earlier. At this time, a pickup truck stops in front of a saloon. A man wearing a fedora hat steps out of the car. The guy walks straight in, pushing the door open, and silently finds a hidden corner to sit down. A moment later, an attractive waitress approaches. The man immediately gestures for her to come over, asking her to pour him a shot of tequila. The waitress doesn't suspect a thing, and immediately follows the request, pouring the drink and placing it in front of the man. But just as she is about to leave, the man calls her to stop again, saying he is looking for a white guy named Jason. Hearing this, the waitress immediately apologizes, saying she has never met this person, but she can help ask the other customers and staff in the saloon. However, as soon as the words leave her mouth, the man's expression suddenly changes drastically. Then he looks up and says a sentence that makes the woman's face turn pale. "You slept with him?" Confronted by the waitress's question, the man's expression remains unchanged. He invites her to sit down, telling her not to stress, that he only has one question he wants to ask. She recognizes the sternness in the man's tone. The waitress can only sit down opposite him. The man seems to be speaking in riddles, confusing the waitress. Finally, she can only tell him that she doesn't know anything. But to her surprise, as soon as the words are out, the man bursts out laughing, saying he knows her like the back of his hand. The implied threat in his words is obvious. The waitress immediately felt extreme fear inside, but before she could react, a switchblade suddenly pressed against her thigh. At this moment, the man maintained the same expression, but the words he spoke sent a chill down the waitress's spine. "My thumb is on the spring button. I can use your blood to paint a portrait." Under the man's ruthless threat, the waitress named Liz finally cracks. She tremblingly asks him what he really wants. Seeing this stubborn woman finally submit, the man doesn't keep up the tough act. Instead, he directly tells her to deliver a message to Jason. "Return what you stole immediately, or I'll make his life a living hell." Finally, the man doesn't forget to give Liz a piece of advice. Absolutely don't think about running or hiding, because a rabbit can never escape the hunter's grasp. Hearing this, Liz immediately feels terrified, nodding in agreement, completely daring not to resist. Seeing this, the man is immediately pleased, gesturing for her to immediately go and do what he instructed. Liz is relieved, hastily standing up and leaving the bar. Not long after she leaves, the man also slowly walks out of the bar. Unexpectedly, a burly customer also follows him out. It turns out this guy witnessed the man bullying Liz with his own eyes, so he decided to teach him a lesson. After easily taking down this guy, the man says nothing more, quickly getting into his car and speeding away. Who exactly is he? And how important is the item Jason stole that it's worth this much effort for him to retrieve? Meanwhile, deep in another part of the mountains, the experienced hunter Bodhi is teaching his daughter to hunt. The father and daughter have lived here for many years, making a living by hunting and fishing. Their life is simple yet steady. Under her father's careful guidance, Tali successfully shoots a deer. However, when the father and daughter approach, they discover the deer isn't dead yet. Seeing this, Bodhi immediately hands his dagger to Tali. He signals for her to step forward and take care of it. As a hunter's daughter, Tali is more than familiar with this. She immediately takes action, ending the deer's suffering decisively. Life in the forest, though simple, is warm and cozy. With her father's company, Tali doesn't feel bored. But whenever the night is quiet, she can't help but miss her mother. The next day is Tali's birthday. Bodhi has already prepared a cake and a gift. After getting everything ready, he drives his old pickup truck alone to town, planning to buy some more household necessities. When he arrives at the general store, Tali is already awake. She immediately sees the gift on the table and quickly opens the gift box. Inside is a brand new compact pistol. Its refined and small design makes it perfect for her to carry with her. Feeling excited, Tali grabs her fishing gear and heads to the riverside, planning to catch a fish to improve her meal. At this time, Bodhi has arrived at the supply store to buy a manual push mower. The store owner frowns when he sees him. It turns out Bodhi is a savage at haggling. Every time he makes the owner bleed and suffer a painful loss. For example, this time, he successfully purchases that manual mower for half price. Just as Bodhi is about to load up his purchases and head home, Tali also finishes her fishing session. Carrying the fat, fresh fish, she walks lightly toward home. But before she takes a few steps, she hears a faint cry for help. Tali hastily puts down the fish, clutching her gun and carefully following the sound. The resulting scene makes her freeze in her tracks. Not long after, Bodhi returns home with his purchases, but strangely his daughter doesn't come out to greet him as usual. He immediately senses something is wrong and frantically searches throughout the house, calling Tali's name repeatedly, but there is still no answer. Bodhi's expression grows darker and darker. He is just about to go outside to look when Tali suddenly runs in, saying she found something by the river. Seeing his daughter covered in sweat, Bodhi's heart sank. He takes his gun and follows Tali to the riverside. Then he can't help but widen his eyes. It turns out that what Tali mentioned was a strange woman who was barely breathing. She is pale and her abdomen is still bleeding. The father and daughter hurriedly take her back to the log cabin and rush to cover her with blankets to keep her warm. Then, at her father's signal, Tali goes to prepare alcohol for disinfection and bandages. But just as Bodhi is about to check the wound, the woman suddenly reaches out her hand, earnestly pleading with him not to take her to the hospital. At this point, Bodhi also notices the anomaly. The woman's abdominal wound appears to be a gunshot wound. He immediately realizes the seriousness of the issue. Once the woman is taken to the hospital, he and Tali will also be implicated. Just then, Tali also brings the first aid supplies. The father and daughter immediately divide the work, hurriedly cleaning the wound, bandaging it, and stopping the bleeding. It isn't until the afternoon that the woman is considered out of danger. Tali experiences something like this for the first time and is inevitably stunned by the situation. She wants to take the woman to the hospital, but after careful consideration, Bodhi still disagrees. He doesn't want to cause unnecessary trouble, planning to wait until the woman recovers a bit before letting her leave. It isn't until midnight that the woman finally wakes up. Tali brings a bowl of hot soup and personally feeds it to her. However, the shock from the day is too great. Tali is still rattled up until she goes to bed. At this time, Bodhi enters the room, telling her that for the time being, she shouldn't go to the riverside, because the woman's background is unclear and they cannot completely trust her. Seeing Tali obediently nod in agreement, Bodhi feels relieved and leaves. However, that night he still clutches his gun, sitting on the rocking chair at the door of the log cabin, seemingly staying awake until dawn. Early the next morning, the woman slowly opens her eyes and wakes up. She moves her body wanting to sit up and discovers that her wrist is handcuffed to the headboard, and Tali is sitting on the bed silently watching her. Seeing the woman turn her head to look at her, Tali frankly nods, saying she can't trust her right now. To ensure safety, she must temporarily restrain her. But seeing the woman's distressed expression, Tali still proactively steps forward to help. Then she introduces herself. The woman also reciprocates, telling Tali that her name is Jenna. While the two are sizing each other up, Bodhi has arrived in town to buy some necessary medication for the woman. He also picks out a soft cotton shirt for her. But as soon as he steps out of the general store, he runs into two local police officers. The officer in the white hat clearly has a good relationship with Bodhi. After they exchange pleasantries for a moment, the officer suddenly asks Bodhi if he's encountered anything unusual lately. Remembering Jenna's plea before she passed out, Bodhi pauses for 2 seconds and ultimately doesn't mention that he rescued a strange woman by the river. After they exchange a few more words, Bodhi hurriedly turns and leaves. Back home, Tali has fallen asleep by Jenna's bed. Bodhi doesn't wake his daughter, turning and going outside the cabin to get busy. But right then, Tali mysteriously walks over and tells him that Jenna has a lot of tattoos on her body. Then she curiously asks if her mother had tattoos back then. Hearing this, Bodhi doesn't hide anything, saying that she actually did have a tattoo on her body. Tali immediately gets excited after hearing this, saying she thinks it is really cool. How could Bodhi not know what she's thinking? He immediately warns her not to follow suit. It's not something you can just casually tattoo on yourself. That evening, Bodhi enters Jenna's room. Seeing that she seems much better, he decides to ask about her background. Facing the question from her savior, Jenna remains silent for a moment before deciding to tell the truth. 3 nights ago, she returned home after exercising and found her roommate, Liz, his roommate, pinned down by a masked man. Before she could react, she was also brutally beaten. In the chaos, she vaguely hears the leader of the men shout that Liz's friends seem to have taken something of theirs. Then the man forces both of them into the car. Jenna only feels the car driving for a long time, finally stopping at a secluded riverside. She and Liz are dragged out of the car by the men and surrounded once again. In despair, Jenna explodes with incredible strength. She suddenly breaks free from her restraints and bolts into the woods. But after only a few steps, she feels a burning, searing pain in her back. The bullet pierces her body. Her vision goes black and she plunges straight into the frigid river. Her last memory, before losing consciousness, is the cold voice of the man on the bank saying she definitely wouldn't survive. Then comes the endless silence. It's clear that the group of masked men who kidnapped Jenna and the one looking for Liz at the beginning of the story are the same people. However, Bodhi is still unaware of this right now. But after hearing Jenna's explanation, he immediately realizes that Liz is the key point of this incident. So he hurriedly grabs his backpack and leaves the house, returning to the riverside where he found Jenna. He searches along the riverbank. Indeed, in a hidden corner covered by dry branches and fallen leaves, he finds Liz's stiff body. Bodhi's eyes show reluctance, but in the end he picks up a nearby branch and pushes Liz's body into the river. After doing all this, Bodhi immediately rushes back home. Tali hurries to the door to meet him. Seeing her father's serious expression, she immediately knows something is up. But facing his daughter's question, Bodhi only says he has to make a trip to town and asks her to stay put at home. But the father and daughter have relied on each other for many years. Tali can tell from his expression that her father is hiding something from her. Moreover, he's been going to town too frequently lately, so she immediately chases after him, insisting on knowing what her father is doing. Reluctantly, Bodhi opens the car door and tells her about his discovery at the riverside. He originally didn't want his daughter to know all this, but considering that the group of people might very well return, he decides to tell her about the current dangers so that Tali will be vigilant and not be caught off guard. However, his words make Tali panic and lose her composure. Seeing this, Bodhi immediately tells her in an unquestionable tone, "Go home now, get your weapon, lock the door and wait for me to return." After giving his instructions, Bodhi starts his pickup truck and heads up the mountain road. Along the way, he repeatedly considers calling the police, but recalling Jenna's plea and Liz's tragic death, he ultimately dismisses the idea. That group of people is clearly ruthless. Carelessly reporting to the police will only bring trouble upon them. Meanwhile, Tali and Jenna are getting along very well. After finishing their meal, Jenna uses the excuse of needing to use the restroom to ask Tali to remove her handcuffs. Afterward, she cautiously draws back the curtain and secretly observes the surroundings of the log cabin. Clearly, she doesn't entirely trust Bodhi and his daughter either. But Tali's thoughtful care makes Jenna feel incredibly warm. Therefore, after returning to bed, she actively starts a conversation with Tali. The tense atmosphere in the room gradually fades away. Just as the two are chatting happily, Bodhi also returns to the log cabin from town. But as soon as he reaches the door, he senses strange noises around him. Bodhi immediately stops reaching for the door, holds his gun and scans the surroundings. Unexpectedly, Tali suddenly steps out the door, curiously asking what's going on. Bodhi doesn't want his daughter to worry, so he quickly dismisses it and enters the house. But to his surprise, Tali had taken it upon herself to remove Jenna's handcuffs while he was out. Faced with her father's sudden anger, Tali quickly explains that there was a reason. Moreover, after spending a few days together, she feels that Jenna poses no danger. The atmosphere between the father and daughter becomes tense for a moment and doesn't ease up even during dinner. Jenna awkwardly looks at the father and daughter, finally taking a sip of water and remaining silent. She knows she was the reason for the argument between the father and daughter. So after dinner, Jenna proactively sits next to Bodhi, sincerely expressing her gratitude to him. But Bodhi only nods because his mind is already drifting far away with the night wind. A moment later, he finally speaks up and asks Jenna what her plan is next. The woman hears this and remains silent. At this moment, she truly doesn't know where to go. Finally, Bodhi makes up his mind to prepare to take Jenna to the town hospital tomorrow. Although doing so would push her back into danger for Tali's safety, Bodhi is forced to make this choice. Night gradually falls. Bodhi once again stands guard at the cabin door, holding his gun and staying awake all night. At the same time, in a warehouse on the other side of town, the man from the bar finally catches Jensen. First, he orders his subordinates to give him a brutal beating until Jensen is no longer able to resist. Only then does the man casually ask him where he hid the stolen item. But Jensen says it's all a misunderstanding, that he was just following orders and never touched anything of the man's. Seeing that Jensen still dares to be tough, the man immediately gives a cold laugh, signaling his subordinates to continue teaching him a lesson. Afterward, he flatly declares that trying to escape his grasp is like trying to escape God. The man then tells his subordinate to bring Jensen's wife and children. Hearing this, Jensen's psychological defense completely collapses. He hastily cries and begs for forgiveness, saying he was forced. The mastermind behind it all is a woman named Lenina. She is not only cunning, but also incredibly ruthless. But even so, the man still has no intention of forgiving Jensen. As a man in power, he cannot tolerate anyone who betrays him. The next moment, agonizing screams echo throughout the warehouse. Not long after, silence returns. It's as if no crime had occurred here. Early the next morning, Bodhi and Tali are having breakfast at the dining table. After a few exchanges, Bodhi suddenly changes the subject, saying that due to recent events, he hadn't visited Tali's grandfather in the next town for a long time. So he wanted to take this opportunity to have his daughter go alone and check on the old man for him. Tali was a bit confused, as her father had never let her go to her grandfather's house alone. But in the end, she obediently packed her things and rode her bicycle in the direction of her grandfather's house, waiting until his daughter's figure was definitely out of sight. Bodhi then turns and signals Jenna to get in the car, preparing to quickly take her to the town hospital. The pickup truck jolts along the winding mountain road. Unexpectedly, just after turning a corner, the two see police cars parked on the side of the road. A few police officers are busy examining the scene. Bodhi sees an old acquaintance and tells Jenna to wait in the car for a moment, while he quickly walks over. He asks Han a question and learns that the police have recovered Jensen's body from the river. He was tortured with an electric drill, leaving his body covered in wounds, and was dumped upstream. His wife and children are currently still missing since last night. As soon as he finishes speaking, another officer rushes over, reporting that the body of the missing barmaid Liz was also found downstream in the river earlier. She was shot in the head and had a tragic death. Bodhi knows exactly what happened. But when faced with the police officer's question, he chooses to remain silent, saying he hasn't been there recently at all. His old friend isn't suspicious, and even reveals another piece of information to Bodhi, saying that the town's underground forces have partnered with the local illicit arms corporation and seem to be plotting something shady. Bodhi is inwardly shaken by this news. 2 people have died in just a few short days, and furthermore, it involves underground forces and an illegal arms corporation. This makes him suddenly realize that Jenna must be hiding something, especially upon learning that Jensen was the deputy police chief of the precinct. Bodhi's thoughts are further reinforced. So he quickly finds an excuse to say goodbye to his old friend, walking back to the car with heavy steps. Unexpectedly, just as the two are talking, the police officer who was recently transferred to town, Baker, noticed Bodhi's car parked by the side of the road. Noticing that someone seemed to be in the passenger seat, he immediately frowns and feels a little uneasy. At the same time, Bodhi also changes his mind. He realizes the seriousness of the problem and immediately drives Jenna back home, no longer mentioning taking her to town. Under his questioning, Jenna finally tells the truth, explaining that in her days, she had seen the face of the ringleader, which is why disaster struck her. She then apologizes to Bodhi, explaining that she didn't intentionally hide it, but was too scared to speak up. Bodhi doesn't blame her, as no one can unconditionally trust a stranger. In the evening, Tali also returns from her grandfather's house. During dinner, she asks about Jenna's family situation and learns that the woman is alone, with no close relatives. Her only best friend has also met with an accident. At the same time, the man from the bar also receives a lead about Jenna. He learns that the woman who was supposed to be dead in the river might still be alive. He immediately flies into a rage and orders his subordinates to uproot the problem at all costs. So that night, a strange car parks outside Bodhi's house. A bald man steps out of the car with an extremely arrogant attitude. Bodhi immediately realizes the person has come to cause trouble, so no matter what the man asks, he refuses to answer, claiming ignorance. But unexpectedly, they only exchange one round, before the man immediately shows his true colors, bluntly stating that he is looking for a girl named Jenna. At this moment, even Tali inside the house reacts. The one who came is one of those reckless criminals. However, faced with the bald man's interrogation, Bodhi maintains a poker face, consistently insisting he has never met Jenna. Reluctantly, the bald man sulks away, but doesn't forget to continue issuing threats, saying that even if he has to dig 3 feet into the earth, he will find Jenna. Sure enough, that night the bald guy secretly drove back again. But just as he was observing the cabin, a gun barrel was suddenly pressed against the back of his neck. Clearly, Bodhi had been waiting for a long time. It turns out the man was just a decoy. The real assassin had sneaked into the cabin a while ago and had already found Jenna. Luckily, in the nick of time, Tali ran in with a gun. As soon as the gunshot rang out, Bodhi immediately pulled the trigger and shot the thug in the car in the head, then quickly ran back to the cabin. Unexpectedly, when he found Tali and Jenna, the other assassin had already been killed by the 2 of them working together. After calming down the 2 still frightened girls, Bodhi immediately takes action and conducts a thorough search, both inside and outside the cabin. Only when he confirms that the danger has truly been eliminated does he breathe a sigh of relief. The next morning, Bodhi immediately takes gasoline and burns the bodies of the 2 assassins. Seeing the grave expressions on the 2 girls' faces, Bodhi wants to offer a few words of comfort, but eventually swallows his words. At this point, they must become strong on their own. Only then can they deal with future crises. So, Bodhi tells the 2 to follow him to deal with the pickup truck that the assassin drove there. After taking care of all the traces, Jenna realizes she cannot continue to involve the father and daughter, Bodhi, and decides to leave. Looking at this lone, helpless girl, Bodhi ultimately cannot bring himself to let her go. Since they are already caught up in this, retreating now is too late. It is better to eliminate the problem permanently and completely erase the possibility of revenge from that reckless criminal group. So Bodhi tells Jenna to sit down and clearly explains the entire cause and consequence of the event, stating that he can work with her to find a solution. But Jenna thinks for a long time and can only be sure that this matter involves Jensen, but she has no idea what exactly caused it. However, Bodhi looks thoughtful upon hearing this. A few minutes later, he takes an iron shovel and walks to the small forest, not far from the cabin. After locating the spot, he immediately brushes aside the thick layer of fallen leaves and digs up a small wooden box from the ground. Opening it, he finds it full of cash. He takes out 2 rolls and then drives straight to town to meet his old police officer friend. The two meet without exchanging any greetings, immediately going straight into the 2 cases of bodies found floating in the river. His old friend knows Bodhi wants to get involved, so he tells him all the clues he knows. It turns out that Jensen, although the deputy police chief, was secretly colluding with local factions. He not only covered up their crimes, but even secretly helped them smuggle contraband. The police speculate that he was murdered this time, most likely because he wanted to take the money and run, or because the underworld factions found out about him skimming funds, leading to this murder threat. As soon as he finishes speaking, the old friend stares intently into Bodhi's eyes, his tone serious, stating that if he knows any internal truth, he must speak honestly and not conceal anything. Bodhi is silent for a moment, finally recounting Jenna's story, but hiding the fact that she is at his home. He only promises to bring her to the police station soon to cooperate with the investigation. Everything Bodhi does is because he doesn't want his daughter, Tali, to be implicated. The old friend naturally understands his concern and immediately agrees with Bodhi on the spot, that he will take Jenna to a safe place to throw off the scent of the underground forces that are stirring up trouble in town. With the police officer's promise, Bodhi's tense heart is finally put at ease. Saying goodbye to his old friend, he immediately rushes back to the cabin without stopping to share this good news with Jenna. Knowing that the police will take her out of town to an absolutely safe place, Jenna's eyes immediately well up. She thanks Bodhi for everything he has done for her, softly saying that she will miss Tali. And Bodhi gives her a thick bag, telling Jenna to use the money inside for emergencies, believing that she will soon be able to start a new life. While it's still light out, Bodhi takes Jenna back to the town church to meet his old police officer friend who is waiting. The two hastily leave through the back door of the church. Watching the police car slowly disappear, Tali feels her heart filled with regret. Since Jenna left, she has been lost in thought, constantly staring at the empty chair, at the dining table spaced out. This period of living together, she had quickly come to regard the gentle and strong Jenna as family. Seeing this, Bodhi felt uneasy too, so he comforted his daughter that many things in life are unavoidable and regrettable. But his daughter responded with tears. She finally couldn't hold back and confessed her feelings to her father, saying that during the days Jenna was by her side, she always felt as if her mother was still there. She hoped her father could bring Jenna back. These words were like a small needle, unexpectedly piercing the softest spot in Bodhi's heart. But even so, he didn't agree to Tali's plea, because nothing was more important to him than his daughter's safety. Late that night, Bodhi held Tali, who was sleeping on the bed. Tali's words kept echoing in his mind. So at the break of dawn, he immediately woke Tali, who was still sound asleep, telling her to go with him to town to find the sheriff. Perhaps he could help Tali and Jenna meet. However, it was strange that the sheriff's phone was constantly unreachable. Reluctantly, Bodhi drove to the police station, but unexpectedly the officer, Baker, told him that the sheriff was not into work today and had been out of contact since last night. He then delivered a shocking piece of news to Bodhi, that there were rumors that both murder cases were connected to the sheriff. Bodhi's face changed color when he heard this, but after 30 years of friendship, he genuinely couldn't believe that the sheriff was such a person. So he suppressed the turmoil in his heart and asked Baker to keep him posted on the news, then hurried out of the police station. Upon returning home, Bodhi immediately took out his weapons box and replenished his ammunition. Although he didn't want to admit it, he could almost confirm that something had happened to the sheriff, and Jenna's whereabouts were also unknown now. That night, this thought was confirmed. Another assassin tracked them down and arrived, but fell into the trap that Bodhi had meticulously set. He found himself tied up tightly, with Bodhi standing beside him, calmly adjusting a running lawnmower. Clearly, if the opponent didn't tell the truth, he would suffer extreme torture. But facing the whirring lawnmower, the assassin remained stubborn. He insisted to the end that he was only following orders and knew absolutely nothing about the truth behind it, even dropping the bomb that Jenna was dead to provoke Bodhi. Seeing that the other party refused to cooperate, Bodhi said no more, directly accelerating the lawnmower's operational speed. In an instant, the deafening sound of spinning gears echoed throughout the warehouse. Next, fresh blood pooled at the assassin's feet. Under the intense pain, the other party finally caved, saying that they had been looking for Jenna all along. After learning that the sheriff planned to secretly take her away, they immediately killed the sheriff and captured Jenna. Hearing this, Bodhi immediately demanded that the opponent lead him to their headquarters. Before leaving, he left a handwritten letter for Tali. To completely eliminate the future danger, Bodhi was mentally prepared to die together. Not long after, guided by the subordinate, Bodhi easily killed the guard at the gate and entered the headquarters of the local underground organization. However, very quickly after that, the people inside the building realized something was wrong. After calling the guards and getting no response, the underground boss immediately led people out to confront Bodhi, who was holding a hostage from a distance. But strangely, the underground boss not only didn't open fire, but also expressed that he could accept Bodhi's deal, while secretly signaling his subordinates to begin surrounding them from behind. But he didn't know that Tali had brought a sniper rifle. During the melee, Bodhi was unfortunately hit by a bullet, but thanks to the excellent coordination between the father and daughter, they quickly eliminated most of the members of the underground organization. Next, under Tali's cover, Bodhi dragged his injured body all the way into the interior of the building. He finally found Jenna barely alive deep inside a warehouse. Just as he was about to take her and leave, unexpectedly at this moment, the underground boss suddenly ambushed him from behind. Bodhi was caught off guard and had his gun snatched away. Fortunately, in that moment of life and death, Tali appeared again to relieve the siege. A single bullet sent the underground boss to hell. In this way, this heart-stopping rescue finally concluded perfectly. At the end of the film, the father and daughter brought Jenna back to the cabin, but after her wounds healed, Jenna still chose to say goodbye to them. And this time, Tali was able to face the separation. The movie ends here. The value of a movie lies in its reputation, while the value of a film review lies in the feeling it evokes. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please leave a comment below.